Well, good evening, this is Handlock Steve coming to you on the 26th of February. And we have just received a new decree from President Emmanuel Macron that all people convicted of hate speech will be banned from the internet forever. Yep, you heard it. So welcome back, a warm welcome to all of you, and it's nice to see all of my subscribers and any new people who are joining me for the first time. I hope you find it interesting. And yes, this is quite incredible. I've just been reading an article about this, and you know what's so ironical about all of this is that France, you know, is one of the first republics, and it was founded on a rule of law and freedom of speech. And here we are. I think just about every right and every freedom has now been trampled in France. And if you took a look at the video prior to this one about the lawyer from France that arrived in my email box from somebody in France and asked me if I would post it on my site to get it circulated. I guess there's a media blackout going on around anything to do with that kind of thing. And so we really are seeing the absolute shutdown of freedom of speech in the name of democracy. And I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see the same thing happen in France as we have in Turkey and China, where people happily go along and vote in a democratic way to end all elections. You know, and I'm actually stunned, you know, when I hear this kind of stuff, that and people arguing that is democracy, that they got to vote on it, they got to decide on whether elections should be held or whether they shouldn't be held. And of course now you have emperors in both of those countries that reign for basically as long as their family's alive. And so, you know, isn't this just what North Korea is like? You know, a family dynasty. It's absolutely incredible. It's incredible. So I always remember a little sort of joke, funny line, and it was about a reporter who had questioned Mao Zedong, and he asked him what he thought of the outcome of the French Revolution, and his answer was, "Oh, too soon to tell." And here we are. It was too soon to tell, because we've gone right back to the aristocracy, and we've come right back to the aristocratic model, and it sounds like the drumbeat of revolution are on the streets of France and Paris in particular. So, I mean, I don't think this will go through a government. I don't think that his popularity rating is strong enough for him to even try and push this kind of idea through. But what's also interesting about this, well, no, I'll tell you what, let's go to the article. It's just quick, and then we'll come back and do a quick wrap-up. Okie dokie, here we go. Okay, the European Union Times. Emmanuel Macron wants to ban hate speech convicts from all social media for life. And that is code for anybody who doesn't agree with the Globalist Agenda. Emmanuel Macron has suggested that anyone who has been convicted of hate speech should lose access to social media platforms for life, as if there isn't enough censorship already. The French president brought the online censorship idea up at the annual dinner of the Representative Council of Jewish Institutions in France, stating that a new way to tackle online hate speech should be tabled for May. And this is one of the things that the globalists do. Okay, they will say things in such a way that if you're Jewish, for example, you would think that you're stopping hate speech against Jewish people. Okay, which is of course something that we all want to get rid of. That's not a good thing. We all know that. But it will be reinterpreted, just as with YouTube. You know, you were going to be censored on your channel if you made a video that contained things that they didn't want to hear. Now that's switched over to anybody who comments on your video with a comment that they don't want to hear is going to shut down or demonetize your video. So they start off like this in a way which seems plausible, and then once it's in place, all of a sudden you see what that really means. The European fight must continue, but it's too slow, Macron said, comparing those convicted of hate speech to football hooligans banned from attending football matches. France is set to embed regulators in Facebook to examine how effectively the social network tackles hate speech, according to Breitbart. So they're going to embed regulators in Facebook. Wow. And Canada's set to do that too in this year's election, because they don't want anybody, any hate group, talking about any of the potential parties that may be elected. Wow, isn't that interesting? How the government will enforce the ban remains unclear, with Secretary of State for Digital Affairs Munir Majoubi saying the IP address is what Twitter has on each user who publishes a message on its platform. It must, as soon as possible, send it to the justice system to quickly identify the author, and then we can continue. It is no longer acceptable today that platforms that have the means to help justice and the police to identify the person who has committed an offence online take several weeks, even months, before giving the information, Majoubi said. The new proposal would mark a significant shift to the current punishments of fines and prison sentences. Some have reacted to the proposal with criticism, including French journalist Gabrielle Robin, who said the proposal could lead to anti-establishment voices such as mass migration critic Eric Zemmour being excluded from social media. Never, I repeat, never ever has a Liberal government taken so many repressive measures, he said. Macron and other globalist politicians have continued to push for increasing laws and regulations to combat hate speech and so-called fake news online. Okay, Neon Nettle, here we go. But Macron's idea comes amid unprecedented levels of criticism of him and his government from the Yellow Vest movement. The bill proposal also comes as Jews face increasing levels of anti-Semitic attacks in France. So, what is interesting about this is here you have a leader, Emmanuel Macron, who refers to himself as Jupiter or Zeus, and refers to the Yellow Vest protesters as thugs and homophobes and Islamophobes and anti-Semites and just about every insult that you can possibly hurl at his own people. He hasn't gone and visited anybody who was injured in the riots, and the police continue to basically overstep their duty and act with a kind of zealousness in these protests to subdue them, when it's quite obvious when you see the pictures, and I've seen some live streaming of the protests. The vast majority of these people are peaceful people marching down a street, and the police firing tear gas and goodness knows what else. I mean, it's appalling. And of course these people are getting blinded and injured by these flashballs that are being fired at them. And yes, I will agree, and I said before many times, there are bad actors on both sides. I'm sure that there is Antifa members there, and members from the Black Bloc, and who knows who else, what have you. And they are causing trouble, yes they are, but you can see clearly who they are. And it's not those people who are actually being targeted, it's the innocent people who are walking, marching, protesting. So this is not looking very good. We're sort of going into some kind of imperialism. I can't believe that this is what we're seeing, and I hope that it doesn't spread too much further, although it's hard not to get a sense that wherever you look, there is some kind of autocracy taking place, whether it be an individual or whether it be a bureaucracy acting as an individual. Okay, so you can have a bureaucratic autocracy as well. Okay, and what I'm calling for is democracy, direct democracy actually, that falls on the public, proportional representation, so that your vote truly does count. And that we get minority governments, because minority governments are what serve the people best. And I don't know whether you notice this, but I seem to be noticing every election, every candidate you look at, they're all offering some good stuff, and they're all offering some really rotten stuff. And they're asking you to hold your nose, and you'll get the good stuff. And what happens every time is that they get elected to a majority, because we're usually sick of the previous party. So in fact what's happening is we're throwing people out instead of electing a new party. The new party gets elected with a minority of the votes, even though they got the majority of seats. They're quite often majorities are elected with 32 to 35% of the popular vote. That is not the majority. and then all of a sudden all the good stuff starts getting put away, and all the stuff that you didn't want to see starts getting rolled out. I mean, I don't know how many times we have to see this happen to start insisting that we have proportional representation and an endless minority where the people are involved and the people's voice is heard. It's as simple as that. I know that there is a fear of the tyranny of the majority, but I think that if we can keep the whole system honest, and that is of course the key. You know, I honestly think that probably any system would work not too bad if it was founded on honesty, integrity, and a rule of law. Whether it be a kingdom or whatever it is, whatever system it is. Where is it where is it in Siam, the king of Siam, and he's beloved, and he's a wonderful king by all accounts. And why is that? Because he's honest and he has integrity and he deals with his people absolutely fairly, so there aren't these imbalances on the street. I mean, that's what causes all the trouble. It's when you get these huge imbalances between one side and the other. And now we've kicked into an era where people cannot afford to feed themselves properly. And, you know, when you've got an empty stomach, boy oh boy, it's pretty easy to put a yellow vest on and get out on the street and start marching. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and enjoyed the information. If you have, please like, subscribe and comment below. Click that big red button, it really does help when you do. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. You take care now. See ya. Bye.